Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming here. Good to see some familiar faces. My name is Eric Worley. I'm a professor of finance here at Western, and it's my privilege to host this special event for our Western community. And we have the distinct honor of introducing a guest who's not only a titan in the world of finance, but also a foundational partner to this university. Paul Merriman is a nationally recognized authority on index investing and the founder of the Merriman Financial Education Foundation. Beyond his work as an award-winning author and podcaster, Paul's commitment to education is deeply personal. His vision and generosity directly fund the Merriman Financial Literacy Program, which I happen to direct here on campus. He provides our students with a massive head start on their path to financial independence. Paul has also made his life's work accessible to everyone. You can find a wealth of free books, such as We're Talking Millions, which is right up here in front, and research tools available at paulmerriman.com. We are incredibly fortunate to have him here to share his expertise. For those joining us remotely via the webinar, we will be monitoring the Q&A feature throughout the session to ensure you are part of the conversation. Please join me in welcoming Paul Merriman in his two-part presentation, 3 Simple Steps to Millions.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Thank you. 82 years old, left here in 1966 as a graduate of Western. At that time, age 19, married. By the time I was 21, had my first child. And as a matter of fact, the next day after being up all night, I did not do the hard work. My wife did. But after being up all night with my wife, having a child, I had to take a business law and an accounting final, which they would not let me have an extra day to get ready for. So this school can be tough, and boy, did I have fun at Western. I loved Western. I think it's one of the reasons that I have had this commitment to trying to help people here get financially ahead, to figure out the steps that you should take, understanding that there are millions of people who do not want you to take the right steps. Because if you take the wrong steps, they make more money. And it may shock you to think that there are people who want to make money off of you, but you will, when you start making money, find a lot of them. And my job, I see my job as doing whatever I can to educate you to do better for you and your family. I've had many students come to me and tell me that the information that I shared was not only helpful to them, but it was helpful to their parents. And so it is my hope in you taking that book home that at some point somebody else in the family may benefit from it. But there is a ton more information beyond that book and what I will say today. And my job is that I motivate you to taking some time this summer to go through more of the information, because if you want to get good at any subject, it takes a while. Sometimes you actually have to read a chapter a couple times, or you have to watch a video a couple times to really get it all. And I will make reference to that information that I would hope you'll find some time this summer to dig a little deeper, because the payoff, I think, can be huge. And the interesting thing is about the payoff is that while it's easy to tell you exactly what to do in the market, exactly where to put the money, there are tens of thousands of people who know where to put the money. The problem and the challenge is for the investor to have the patience, to have the discipline, to having the ability to stay the course, to truly buy and hold a good investment for a lifetime. And I'll show you some that anybody could have invested in. Anybody with a few $100s could have invested in and have as good a return as almost anybody that you know. You have to be careful when you hear the stories about other people's successes. Oftentimes they tell you about what worked and they do not tell you about what didn't work. And so I think if you get the evidence, if you get the history, you'll get a sense of how you can do this in a way that's in your best interest. I just want to make sure that oh yeah, disclaimer. I am here for entertainment purposes only. I cannot give you personal advice. I do not know your particular situation. And invariably, it says if you want help, go see a professional. I just got to tell you, there are a ton of professionals who are not going to give you the help that you really need because they're possibly selling a product that they're obligated to sell for the firm that they work for. And so it goes beyond just getting help. You really need help that you know is committed to the same things that I'm going to share with you here today. And if they're not doing that, we need to understand why they're not doing that. And my mission, I really want you to have what I have, millions. I mean, it's not like there's any magic to having millions. If you take a newborn child and give them $1 a day and invest that $1 a day, and they do that, you do it until they're 21, and then they do it until they're 65. At market rates of return, you're going to have something between $2 and $3, $4 million. Just that $1 a day. What was the key? Starting early. That is such a big deal. And that is why if we can ever figure out how to motivate you to start investing right now, I mean, even if it's only $5 a month, that you get into the rhythm and understand how easy that is. And to know that your $5 a month is being managed the same way that money is managed for multimillionaires. This is not like they're special. As a matter of fact, in a way, you're the special one because you're being treated like the richest among us. I came here to originally lobbied for having a 3-part presentation today, an hour each for beginners, then intermediate, and then advanced. That's what I wanted to do. And people said, no, they don't want to stay for 3 hours. So I've got 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, I do want to talk to people who really would rather not do anything about investing. I mean, you know you have to invest in order to have money later in your life. Unless you win the lottery or you have wealthy parents who are going to leave you a lot of money, which that happens to a lot of people. As a matter of fact, have you seen the amount of money that is supposedly coming from the baby boomers to people like you, or maybe that would be maybe your grandparents who were the baby boomers? I inherited $2,000. That was it. And there are a lot of us that will only inherit $2,000. And so my question first and foremost is, how many of you understand that you do have to save some money for the last part of your life? That's what this is all about. You are worth millions as a worker bee, okay? I was worth millions as a worker bee. But when you're no longer a worker bee, you've got a retire bee. And when you are retired, nobody's willing to pay you for sitting there doing nothing. And that's when this money's got to be there to work for you. So the most important question I'll ask tonight, how many of you are willing to make the commitment to saving money, but you really don't want anything to do with it? You just want it to be taken care of in a way that is in your best interest. And you don't care to micromanage and be in and out and doing things. How many are that kind of an investor. Okay, now that's actually most of the people here. And the question is, can you get what you want and count on the people to do exactly the right thing for you? By the way, nobody knows the exact right thing because nobody knows the future. I don't care how confident Jim Cramer can sound on TV. He knows he doesn't know the future. Nobody does. They're all making it up. But because they're loud and they talk fast and they know a lot of numbers. I know a lot of numbers. But I can promise you, those numbers are in the past and cannot be purchased. You have to know that you're going into the unknown here. So if you don't want to do it, you are in the same position as probably your grandparents or maybe your parents, because there used to be pensions for people. People used to go to work for a company for 30 or 40 or 50 years, and then you would retire and you got a guarantee every month. And I can tell you from having worked for a lot of people who have pensions, they absolutely love them because they know, just like Social Security, that check is coming every month for the rest of their life. And if they worked at a decent company for a lifetime and that company was putting money away on a regular basis and it was being invested for their future, that it's going to be, in fact, I know lots of people that don't use their investments at all because they live off of their pension and Social Security. Yes. Difference between a pension. Okay, here's how pension works. We go to work for the company. Every month, they don't give you the money. They don't let you have it. They don't give you a choice. They take a certain amount of money and they put it in an account, a pension fund. That is being managed, knowing that you are a young person. As a young person, they have to take more risk with the money. And then when you get older, they know they're going to have to protect that money. You never have to make a decision. It's exactly what most of you actually tell me that you want when you put your hand up and say, I don't want to do it. You want to have a pension that you're guaranteed an income when you retire. Does anybody want that? Of course. I never had it because I worked jobs. Well, I worked for myself a lot of my career. But I worked in an industry that didn't worry about the people in that way. So the pension is absolutely amazing. When I was your age, literally in 1966, when I was your age, and I was here graduating, about 50% of the people, the adults, had pensions. Today, it's about 11%. It's way down there. So what did they do? They ask you to do the saving. Now, all of a sudden, you know nothing about investing. You mean nothing deep. You're not going to be able to get up here and teach this class, maybe. It isn't all that complex, but you think it's complex anyway. And so at the end of the day, you're not sure you want to take care of that money because what if the market goes down? What if the market disappears? What if the people where I'm putting the money walk away with my money? I mean, there are a lot of fears that people can have. What if the politicians completely screw up our society and our economy? All of those things can be your concern when you're responsible. And so it changed things. And here's what happened. People started putting money, their own money, they take, let's say, I want you to take out 10%. I want you to eventually take out 20% of the money you make and put it into what's like a pension, except it's a 401k or an IRA, individual retirement. And you take care of it, which means you make the decisions. The good news is in 1993 or 94, and I'm going to talk about this today, the industry came up with a product that is in essence the same as having a pension trustee take care of a pension for you as an individual. Now we're talking because they are managing the money. And they got billions and trillions of dollars they're managing now. And they are doing what they think is exactly the right thing for the average person in this room. That word average is important, because if they're managing a portfolio for you and everybody else who's going to retire in 2065, let's say for just a second, then they have to assume that you all have something about you that is common, which could be your risk tolerance. Wait a minute, I have very high risk tolerance. You have very low risk tolerance. And so they are forced to compromise and build a product that is appropriate in theory for everybody in this room that's going to retire in 2065. If you're going to retire in 2070, that's a slightly different portfolio, and it's managed for that person. If you're going to retire in 2029 or 2030, that's an even different portfolio, because now we're talking about somebody who's right on the edge of retirement, and you can't be all in stocks, because if the stock market goes down, you could destroy a retirement because you wouldn't have enough money to meet your financial needs. One of my heroes, he is not one of my truth tellers, though. Just want you to know, by the time we're done here, I'm going to introduce you to the people I consider to tell the truth to people like yourself who are trying to put their money away for the long term. He's just a wise old guy who's very, very rich, one of the richest people in the world. And he says this not just about investing, but about in life. To be a success, you only have to do a very few things right, as long as you don't do too many things wrong. Now, in that book that you've got, there are 12 things I want you to do right. 12. And every one of them is worth an extra $1 million. Now, you might say, does that mean if I do everything you say to do in that book, that I could have $12 million someday? Actually, more than $12 million. And so when you're done reading it, if you really don't get it, paul@paulmerriman.com. Include your phone number. And in the subject line, put WWU, so I'll know where it came from. So here's the problem. There are a whole bunch of people who want you to do the wrong thing. And it's going to be pretty obvious as you go through that list of 12 when you read the book. And I'll be talking about a handful of them here today. It's really obvious what they are. And you might even say, what idiot would pay that commission when you don't have to pay that commission? What idiot would pay high taxes when you don't have to pay any taxes? What idiot? I mean, it goes on and on. And maybe the word isn't idiot, the word is what uneducated person. And that's why we want to make sure, and that's why we are working very hard, and we have not exactly won the challenge, been able to accomplish what we want, but I'm telling you, we're committed to it. We want a course that every student who comes through Western has to take in order to graduate that makes them financially literate. Because you get the education to give yourself a chance to go out and apply your personal capital. It's what we want you for now. We want you to work cheap, work hard, and learn what you need to learn to be good in some field. Because when we get you as a new employee, oftentimes you don't know all the stuff we want you to know. But you have learned enough for people to want to hire you to work for them. And while you're being paid, the whole idea is for you to be smart enough to put some money aside. I believe once you understand the math of investing, that you probably are about 95% of the way there. Because what you'll see in the math of investing, number one, the math is guaranteed. You don't have to depend on the market doing a certain thing. We're going to guarantee you get that. What would happen if you got that return? What would happen if you put a little more money in? What would happen if you took a little more risk? All of these, every step you take is going to have an impact on the math. And I just want to show you the very basics of it here. And that is the scenario 1 and scenario 2. I want you to see what happens over an investing lifetime to somebody who saves money for 40 years, puts away $6,000 a year. Now, I consider that 10% of what a lot of you will make when you get a good job. In a couple of weeks, twice a year, I speak to nurses at Texas A&M that are graduating. Now, normally get 70 to 90 students, and I get to spend 3 hours with them, teaching them what they need to know to make the right decisions. The beauty of that is, I not only know what nurses make in the industry, I know how much they make in Texas, because I know, number one, what industry they're in, what state they're in, and the numbers are all there. I have no idea where you're going or what you're going to do, because you are not all from the same college intending to do the same kind of work necessarily. How many are from the business and economics college? Yeah, most of you. Well, welcome to all of you. I hope it's good for all of you. But here's what I know. If you make 8% during the years of accumulation, that's all the years you put money into the 401k probably and the IRA as well. But you put away $6,000 and you do that for 40 years. That means you have invested, I'm going to see if I can get this to work here. Now, $1,000. I'll stand up. Now, here's what happens. At that 8% compound rate of return at age 65, you got $1.7 million. I'm going to tell you, 8% is a slam dunk, okay? I will show you where I think you would make a lot more without having to do anything unusual. Now, it doesn't mean that it'll happen because I think it will, okay? But I sure would like it to. Anyway, $1.7 million. Then if you retired and you took 4% a year out of that retirement money, which is pretty common for people to take 4% to live on, you would have taken out $2.6 million, and then you passed away at age 95, and you left your children in charities $2.8 million, all from $6,000 a year. Now, that totals up how much you left to others and how much you took out. That is your return on investment right there. That's everything, however you got it. Now, that doesn't include the $2,000 I inherited. So there'll be other sources that might come into the picture here, but this is just to show the math of it. But what if you could make 8.5% during the accumulation and 6.5% instead of 6% during the distribution period? Well, instead of, and it's the same 240,000, but instead of having 1.7 million, you got 1.9. Instead of having 2.8 at age 95, you got 3.7, and instead of taking out 2.6 million, you take out 3.2 million. That is really a big deal. It's an extra $1.5 million. But then you're going to have, particularly when you have enough money for people to say, whoa, let me manage it for you professionally. Now, the firm that I ran to manage money professionally did not get 0.5%, but got 1%. But if we had charged 0.5%, that is what you'd be giving up, $1.5 million. I mean, you got that? That's $1 million difference if you decide to take care of it instead of asking somebody else to manage it for you. Now, the good news is there is somebody who will take care of it for you, but they'll do it for about 0.1%, okay? And do a great job. More on that later. But this is worth fighting for. If not for you, for your kids or for your charity. My wife and I, when we die, there's money that's supposed to come to Western. We want that number to be as big as we can make it. Anyway, this is important, I think, to see that math, because if you could figure out how to make another 0.5% and make 9% during the accumulation and 7% during the distribution period, take out the 4%, it doesn't double from 1.5 to 3, it goes up to 3.5 now because you found some place to make an extra 1%. Are you with me on that? Now, I know this is just the math, and you're going to say, well, it must be hard to find that extra 0.5 or 1%. And no, it is really, really easy. When I was your age and an investor and went into that industry, people were paying in order to have their money managed and to move it around 2 to 3% a year. That was terrible for the investor, but that's the way the industry was built. And then some people came along and said, this isn't fair. Charles Schwab was one. John Bogle was another. Absolute heroes in the industry, because they are responsible for having the opportunity for you to be able to get this work done for next to nothing. Now, let me just make one more assumption here. Actually, two more. Let's say, and this is about you, this is the part I love, is you can be a partner in this process of making more money. It is not all about other people doing the right thing to make you more. It is about you doing the right thing. And in this particular case, all we're changing, we're doing the 9 and the 7, but we're going to have you every year increase the amount that you put in by 3%. So instead of investing $240,000, you're going to invest $452,000, but you're going to do it slowly, and you're hopefully getting raises as this is going along, and so you have the ability to pay for that. So the first year you put away $6,000, and the second year you put away $6,180, which means you're putting away $15 more per month. Not impossible. For one thing, we're trying to get you up to 20% anyway, because that's probably how much you should be trying to save. And look what happens. Instead of almost $9 million, you've got over $12 million because you put in more money. This is a partnership, and you are a really important partner, particularly for the early years while you're building the foundation, because later, the money you put in is going to be peanuts to the amount of money that you make on your investments. I promise, if you do this, you will have a day in the future when you will make $100,000 in a day. I promise. I know it just seems like it's impossible, but the market will go up, and you will have built up a pool of investments that will be huge. And the beauty is you don't have to know anything except how to keep your hands off it and how to put it in there. And everything else is taken care of for you without any guarantees, of course. And one last one. I love this one. I want you to start as early as you possibly can. Sometimes people go to their parents and ask to borrow money so they can start investing early. Not every parent can do that. But last time I was here a few weeks ago, one of the students shared with me that he had done that, and the parent had said yes. And so he's already got about $50,000 invested at a very, very young age. And now he's got to pay his father and mother back. Now, oftentimes parents say, oh, forget about it. I'm proud that you did what you did. I mean, some of us remember, our life is a random series of events. We are what color we are randomly. It's not something that somebody can say, well, I'd like one of those, please. Anyway, here what we're going to do is we're going to start at age 25 and somebody's going to start at age 30. So 5 years more money going in. 5 years impacted. Those 5 years are going to be impacted by that 3% raise as we go along too. So the total amount of money that's under management is $452,000 versus $362,000. There is a $4.7 million outperformance between starting at age 30 and starting at age 25. So that's all about you. That is not about the stock market. And it's you sacrificing. I don't know what the greatest sacrifice was that you have done to try to get ahead. For a lot of you, probably going to college was a huge sacrifice. My biggest sacrifice was living in a luggage room while I was going to college. Cost me $12.50 a month for the luggage room, and I had to share it with another person, and he paid $12.50. I thought that was, maybe it wasn't that big a deal. I worked hard. I used to go through the dorms at night looking for people who were going through the dorms at night to be able to be here. That also was not a big sacrifice. I think Ben Franklin's got it right, and you got it right now. Knowledge pays a huge return. That's going to be your personal capital, your ability or willingness to work hard. That is a big deal. And when bosses see that you are willing to work hard, they tend to love it. I was a boss for many years. I was the first one in the morning. I was the last one out at night. And I saw the people who came in earlier and worked longer and worked harder. And you love people that do that, and they hopefully get compensated for it. Well, knowledge gives you a big advantage. And you already have, we're talking millions here, the free copy. But I want you to know on our website, there's another book, and the PDF is free. You can download it from our website, Two Funds for Life. A third book is available there, Spending Your Way to Wealth. That has to do with the psychological challenges of dealing with money. And that's a whole other topic that I can't get in here today, because there are some 48 different biases that we come to the table with as people when it comes to mistakes that we make because our brain tells us something that isn't true. Our brain tells us we're smart enough to handle things we really aren't that good at handling. Our brain tells us that what just recently happened and people made a lot of money in it, it's going to keep happening. So all you got to do is get on that thing that's been making a lot of money because you're going to make a lot of money. People believe that. People believe because they live in Greece that they should invest their money in their homeland, Greece. The same thing in New Zealand. They invest in New Zealand companies. Why would they want U.S. companies? We do the same thing. Now, not everybody. I've got half of my money in internationals. And I have, anyway, these are books that when you're spending some time this summer looking for something to learn would help, I think. But there you are now, the biggest decision of all, to save for the last third of your life. And by the way, this is really important that you do this. You're living longer. Social Security is not the same guarantee. We're not sure what it is, but maybe not the same. You're going to end up having more and more responsibility. I see it already in my Social Security and the Medicare. They're not covering the things they did before. So we have to step up. And so we're going to live longer, and that likely means that a higher probability we're going to end up living someplace that costs more in order to change our bed and such. So I want you to have enough. I think everybody wants to have enough. We'd like it to just happen without us having to do anything. But unfortunately, unless you got wealthy parents, it's difficult for it to just happen. But I do know this. You do more than likely have at least $3 million in personal capital. I worked until I was 70 for money. So I worked, and I started working at age 11. Now, all I was doing at age 11 was selling Christmas cards. It's not like I did anything important. But to the relatives, it was important. And I had no overhead, by the way. It was the best job I ever had because my mother would drive me to the relatives and I'd carry my little books in and sell Christmas cards. And I think I still have that $354 I made. You're going to probably be paid over $3 million for your work over your lifetime. Just because you've got a college degree, you want to go to work, you want to do a certain thing. Some of you are probably committed to industries that don't pay huge salaries. Others of you are in industries that pay a lot. But you'll get paid about $3 million or more. And you will probably need $3 to $10 million to retire the way that you want. Now, why so much? Because if you take 4% of $3 million, that's $120,000. That seems like a lot, doesn't it? But I will tell you that for the $60,000 that you might be paid now, if we get normal inflation, it could cost $200,000. If we get a little higher inflation, it could cost $300,000 a year to live. Does that seem outrageous? It does, doesn't it? How could that be? That is just the impact of a 3 and 4% inflation rate. Because when I was your age, when I got out of college, what I was paid was under $400 a month. And the difference between the under $400 a month that I made and that you're going to be paid, which hopefully is a lot more than $400 a month, is going to largely be because of inflation. It's not because we're smarter or because machines are more efficient. It's largely because of inflation. In fact, many people's wages have not kept up with inflation for 40 years, 45 years. And then you need to know how much you should save. You need to know where to save. And you need to know how to invest. Good news is there are lots of books on this subject. And the list of truth tellers at the end of the handout, there's a PDF for this, by the way, where do they get the PDF, Eric? Oh, I've got that. Okay, great. Thanks, Peter. So we got to answer those questions. Now, here's what the industry believes. Fidelity would say this. I think Vanguard would say this. The people who are working with you here, the mentors, the peer mentors would probably say this. Long term, you're supposed to be spending about 50% of your money that you make on the needs, housing, food, that you cannot live without. Then about 30% will be for the things you want, that you don't really need, that you could maybe at some time in your life take a close look and stop spending money on things you don't need in the hopes that you'll have enough to save for the future. There's a website, I did not list it, called Choose FI. Choose FI is a wonderful website for people who want to focus on all the different ways you might be able to save money. Is anybody here a really frugal, big-time saver? Anybody? One? Yeah. And savers love Choose FI because all these people tell their stories about how they're able to live on less. Many of them, by the way, these people who call this Choose FI, FI stands for financial independence. These young people want to retire when they're 40, 45, latest 50. And they look for every way they can to save money. Many of them do not leave home until they're about 30 because they're saving the money on rent. I would have gone nuts, but some people will sacrifice for bigger things. And then 20% for savings and debt repayment. And when the debt repayment is gone, for savings. That's what the experts say you should be doing. Now, 20% seems like a lot. And maybe you'll have to start with 5. And I will tell you that if you ask the truth tellers, and I'll spend a minute on that before I get done. If we ask the truth tellers what you should be doing about the debt repayment versus investing for the future, they don't all have the same story, but every story is a good one. Every piece of advice will fit somewhere here in this room. Here he is again. I love this one because so many people, they do not think they can possibly save any money. He says, do not save what is left over after spending, but spend what is left over after saving. Always pay yourself first. And the industry, the 401k industry, has discovered that people who didn't think they could possibly save, when the day they went to work, they immediately started taking money out and saving it for retirement, and they learned to live on what was left. They just simply learned to live on what is left. And 83% of the people who did this adjusted and learned to live on what they had. And I got to believe that 83% of the people, that must be in this room as well. Okay. Now the decision, once you're saving for the long term, is where to invest the money. And because you're also very, very young, money that is for the long term, and that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about saving for a vacation. That's a totally different thing. Saving to replace that income for that last third of your life. Because you want to make as much when you retire as you were making when you quit working, if you can. If you can do that, that is a wonderful thing to be able to happen to you. Now, here's where you're going to come to a huge fork in the road. There are 2 places where people will typically invest. One is in stocks, shares of companies that trade in the open market, where you can actually go buy a share of Microsoft, a share of NVIDIA. As a matter of fact, you can buy a quarter of a share of Microsoft and an eighth of a share of NVIDIA. You can buy for as much money as you have, a share of stock, and you are an owner of that company. Now, you're not going to have a lot of power. They don't care at Microsoft that you own a half a share, okay? But you do because you own it. And everything that happens to every other shareholder of Microsoft happens to you. Every other owner. And the people at Microsoft theoretically are coming to work every day, hundreds of thousands, I guess, being paid well, I guess. And even after being paid well, they still have a lot of profits. We know that. And you, as a shareholder in Microsoft or any other public company, get to participate. And while the first dollars are small and it doesn't seem like very much, I promise you, we have a table I didn't bring today that shows starting $1,000 a year, $83 a month. And then every year you increase by 3%. That grows and grows. And for the first 10 years, it's all about what you put in, because the market isn't able to make as much as you're putting in. If you're putting in $1,000, you can't put in $1,000 and expect to make $1,000. You understand that. You put in $1,000, you'd like to make $100. So you're the senior partner at that point. But later on, when the portfolio is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's what happens with every investment we can show you from the past that would be a legitimate investment, then all of a sudden the money you're putting in is peanuts. But you keep putting it in there because that's part of the deal. You're building your company. It's like your own private company. Probably nobody else in the world has exactly the same number of shares that you do of the same companies. Those shares are risky. They go up and down. Sometimes they can go up and down 5% in a day. Not very often, but they can. So they're risky short term. But over the long term, they don't show any risk at all, because they have gone through good times and bad times, but the direction historically, and that may be because of inflation, it may be because the society is growing. There's a whole bunch of forces behind all of those companies. But bonds are very high risk in the long term. In order for you to keep up with stocks, with bonds, you have to be able to save almost 10 times as much. So if it's $1,000 to get you where you want to go in stocks, it's going to take $10,000 to get the same place with bonds, because they don't pay much, because there is almost no risk. And that is the way investing works. Academics show it time after time. You take more risk if you invest, not if you speculate, not if you gamble, but if you invest. Take more risk, get a higher return. I want you to put all of your money for the long term as a young person into stocks, equities, but not individually. Never individually, and we'll talk about how in just a sec. So let's talk about the history now. Let's get out of the math and just talk about the history of investing, because it's all we have. How many would like me to tell you what the future is going to be? Well, look, nobody knows. How about if you knew that I have no idea? The only idea I have that makes any sense at all is to look at the past, and not the last year or 10 years or 20 years, but the last 100 years or the last 50 years. See if I've got it. I like this. Here are two investments that started in 1976. Starting to sound like 50 years? This was a new kind of investment that people had never seen before. It was a kind of a mutual fund that I'll talk about in a few minutes, called an index fund. I want you to see that every person who put $10,000 or money, it didn't matter how much money they put in, that over that period of time, reinvesting all of the dividends, never taking any money out, not adding any money, just that initial investment went up to $2 million, almost $2.2 million. That was an investment of $10,000 to be specific. So here's a bond fund, a really good bond fund, a really big bond fund. $10,000 grew to over $200,000. Notice the bond fund. There's virtually no volatility because there's no risk, or the risk is very, very, very small. So where do I want you to be? I want you to be here where it goes up and down. As a matter of fact, when you were young and the market's going down and you're putting money into the market every month into your 401k or your IRA, when the market is down, you buy more shares. When the market is up, you buy fewer shares. This is $100 invested in bonds almost 100 years ago, worth about $2,000 to $12,000. Here's $100,000 in the stock market, a lookalike of that index that we just looked at that went up to 2.1 million. Notice $100 grew to 1.4 million over that 98 years. Bonds are for people who do not want to take risks. They want the portfolio to be stable. I am 82. My wife is 4 years younger than I. We don't want to take all the risk of the market. So we're half in bonds, half in stocks. You should be all in stocks. And if we look at the S&P 500, again, that fund I showed you there a minute ago, here's every 59 40-year periods. The average compound rate of return was 11. Remember, I was talking about 8 and 9 earlier. 40-year average return. The worst ever was a 40-year period where it only made 8.8. By the way, that happened during a period of low inflation. Okay? The 12.5 was the best. That happened during a period of high inflation. So one stock versus all stocks. I already said it. I don't want you to put your money in one stock. One stock can go out of business. Anybody remember WAMU? General Motors went out of business. Basically, they came back, but they had to go through a bankruptcy to do it. One of the biggest, most profitable companies of all time. And so we don't want you in individuals. Enron was the 7th largest company in the U.S. when it went up out of business.
Just ETFs or indexes?
Oh, are these ETFs we're talking about? Exchange traded funds? Is that what you're saying? Oh, an exchange traded fund is an individual stock. Yes, but it represents a mutual fund. So the many stocks, we're going to talk about that, are mutual funds. But ETFs are a kind of a mutual fund. Yes, you're right. But here's what I want you to know that makes this so obvious. Over the last 100 years, approximately, 96% of all public companies averaged a compound rate of return of 3%. 3%, not 10. The other 4% compounded at 14%. And the most profitable company since 1925 is the company that makes Philip Morris. 16% compound rate of return. And so it is a relative handful of companies, 1 out of 25, that drives the market. Right now, it's NVIDIA. At another time in history, it was Exxon. At another time in history, it was GE. These things over time change. And there is one kind of mutual fund that is guaranteed to have you in those big winners. But you have to take the losers too. When I say the losers, the ones that only make 3%, because nobody knows ahead of time. The company that owns 7% of this mutual fund that probably almost everyone in this room will have at some point in their career. 7% is in NVIDIA. Because NVIDIA blossomed. On the other hand, when they started investing in NVIDIA decades ago, it was just a relatively small company. So you got to be, if you were in that mutual fund, you got to be there with NVIDIA. You got to be there with Microsoft, not from the first day they go public, but after they have grown to a certain size that they qualify to be in the fund. So that the Enron, they don't have any Enron anymore. They don't have any WAMU anymore. Those things are gone. So it automatically self-corrects. It automatically picks up the big winners. But in order to get that 11%, you do need to hold on to all of them. All I'm saying is, yes, please. Yes.
We are currently going through a fairly large shift towards specifically AI and technology. With this, what would you change within your procedure, your investing procedure to adapt to these changes? Because that's what.
Yes, that's the beauty. As a matter of fact, just for fun, I went to see what was hot when I was your age, back in '66. And graduating. And you could see by looking at the list of companies that were the biggest in the S&P 500 index, the 500 major companies, you could already see who were in fact, the top companies then owned percentage-wise almost the same percentages as the top companies now in the S&P 500. It self-corrects. It moves in, it moves out over time. It adjusts to the change. It doesn't buy Philip Morris and hold it as a great big company forever, because as other companies get bigger, it gets smaller. It doesn't change the fact that it has the biggest accumulation of wealth, but it's a small company. Today, Exxon is about 1% of the market. There was a time when Exxon was probably 6 or 7% of the market. And that's the way these indexes, which I'll talk about. And by the way, I also know that the pizza is here, and I'm still in part 1. And do you want to break and eat hot pizza or what? You'll give me the hook. 5 minutes. Oh, okay. I'll hook myself. Anyway, part of what you're asking, I think, don't things change? And how do we change to anticipate? And my view is you can't anticipate. I'll show you some things in the next half of the presentation that shows you year by year performance. And what did we learn from that year by year performance? Nothing about the next year. And that's the challenge. We're in a performance that will be created, and afterwards, everybody is an expert and can explain, well, that's why was small cap value so good during that period of time? Well, here are the 10 reasons why. But they didn't know it beforehand. But they're so good at telling us why. And then, of course, the big money is made when we can get you to move from whatever you're in, because I promise you, over your lifetime, they're going to be working day and night to try to get you to get out of what you own and get you into what they want you to own, because they don't make a penny until you get into what they want you to own. So they have got to disrupt you emotionally and get you to give up on whatever you have. And I can tell you, this is not going to be easy, because what you have, like the S&P 500, it had from 1975 until 1999 a 17% compound rate of return. That's an amazing rate of return. That's huge, as opposed to the historical, you're doubling your money over that period of time from what you would have had or more. Then what happened for the next 10 years? When people predicted it would make 20% a year for the next 10 years, it lost money for the next 10 years. It lost 10% of its value in total over that following 10-year period. What do you do with that? Oh, I'll tell you what you do with it. You do the obvious thing. You go with the people who were making money during that 10 years, because there were people that were making money. Get out of that S&P 500. Why would you be in that dog? It lost money for 10 years. Are you a fool? Well, you feel like a fool because probably somebody said along the way, you should get out of S&P 500, and you didn't. And you'll never forget they told you to and you didn't. Because you never forget the mistake that you made and that your spouse suggested you change things and you didn't. So here's what happened. The people who stayed the course from 2009 March on, it has been one of the great runs in stock market history. And NVIDIA has been part of that, and Microsoft's been part of that, but only a part of that. But you're right. That's what our brain wants to come up with. What should we be doing to adjust to the story that we know today? And human nature, the one part about human nature is that we are driven to write a story. We are driven to come up with our way of explaining why things happen. They still debate today, why did the Depression happen? There are 2, 3, 4 different theories about why it happened. Okay, well, my 5 minutes, I think it's, oh, and there you are with the hook. Yes, I like this. I like this a lot. And when we come back, we'll invest in the greatest investment ever created in the 1920s.
So before
Oh,
we dive into the pizza, use a random number generator.
does that,
$1,000 winner. And I'll stand closer to you. You must be present to win.
do you have to be of age?
Yeah, I don't know about that. So the first person that I drew was Corrine Sebastian.
Hey, Corrine.
Corrine here. We're online. Maybe check.
Oh, yeah, there are 20 people claiming to be Corrine.
Right. Yeah, you have to show ID. Corrine Sebastian. What's the spelling on there? Corine. Corrine or Corinne? No. Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Moving down the line. No Corrine. Going once.
Wait, can I just make one point? First of all, I forgot my checkbook. This is from my personal checkbook, so the $1,000. And I forgot my checkbook, so I'm going to put it, checks in the mail. It'll come tomorrow. And what I pledged to do is to help you get it into a Roth IRA. Now, you don't have to do that. You can go blow it if you want. You're just like my kids. I can't stop you. But I don't want you to blow it. I want you to see it be worth $1 million. And I believe when you see what I recommend, I think that you'll see it's possible, but you don't have to. Go ahead.
All right. The next name is Lisa.
Wait. How many Lisas are there in the room?
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
Someone online said that Corrine is watching online. So I just don't see her name.
Oh. Okay.
Did she sign? Oh, did she sign up? Have to sign up?
Yeah, yeah. Can she type in the chat?
Let me see what the response is. Ah, Corey Sebastian. Corey is my nickname. So it's Corey Sebastian.
Okay, we have a winner.
We have a winner. All right.
Corey, we'll connect you with Paul at paulmerriman.com, and you two can work it out.
Yeah. Send me Paul at paulmerriman.com. Send me your phone number, please, Corinne. Not right now.
Okay, so quick 5-minute break. Help yourself to pizza and other good snacks.
You're welcome. I hope it helps. You've done it before. You've been in this before. Oh, you haven't? Oh, you look familiar.
Twin contract.
Well, nice to meet you. Mutual funds. It is, just to give you a very brief history, wealthy people in the 1920s had big time money managers managing their money. But the kids didn't have much money, and so they couldn't get the same kind of management. And so the reason, so the story goes, that the mutual fund was developed to take care of the children of the wealthy. Well, if that's what it took to get the mutual fund to become a financial product for all, that's great. I mean, I'm happy for the children of the wealthy. But it became possible for somebody with a small amount of money. I mean, literally today, you could go to Fidelity. They have no minimum. You could open up an account for $10 if you wanted to. And you could take that $10 and put $5 in one ETF. It's a kind of a mutual fund, and the other $5 in another. And you would own a little tiny bit of each one of those ETFs. And within those mutual funds, and I'll use those interchangeably, ETFs and mutual funds, you can own inside of the mutual fund 5,000 companies. So if you put $10 into that mutual fund, you have very, very small pieces of Microsoft and NVIDIA and Exxon and on and on and on. And that's amazing because you are literally being treated like the wealthiest inside of a mutual fund. When I was your age, they were amazingly profitable for the people selling them because we would get 8.5% commission on the day that we sold you. So if we could sell you $100,000, we would get $8,500 immediately. Now, the brokerage firm took part of that and the broker took part of it. But all of a sudden, $8,500 was sitting in somebody else's pocket, not in yours. Forever. I mean, that's the part we have to understand, is that when we give up these pieces of money, we got to be careful we don't give them up forever. When you buy a mutual fund that has high expenses, you are paying high expenses forever. And not only did you have to pay 8.5% to get into that load mutual fund, but in some cases, if it paid dividends or capital gains and the money got reinvested back into more shares of the fund, you got another commission. And at that same time, if I sold somebody 100 shares of IBM, I would get a commission, the house and I would get a commission of $175. If I sold 1,000 shares of IBM, I got 10 times $175, and those commissions were regulated, preset, no negotiating. And then during my lifetime, fortunately, and definitely during yours, they eliminated the 8.5% load, and most people buy mutual funds without paying any commission at all. They're called no load. And if you ever start to pay a load for a mutual fund, please drop me an email with your phone number and I will call you and we'll talk. Because I guarantee there's another fund that you could be in that you would not have to pay that commission to get in. And reinvested dividends and reinvested capital gains no longer have to pay a commission. And you can trade 1,000 shares of IBM today with virtually no commission. Talk about a disruption. Wow. And talk about something, well, and then along comes the index fund that I'll talk about in a second, and it just took us a mile further in acting in your best interest. But I can promise you this, I cannot promise you how well you'll do with your investments. But I will tell you that if you get the same return that I did, you will make way more money than I ever made. Because I lived during that period of time of high expenses. And by the way, when I was your age, the marginal tax rate, the highest marginal tax rate was between 90 and 70%, depending on what year you start. Which means you are not only paying lower taxes today, you are able to put money into a 401k or an IRA or a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA and either not pay any taxes until you retire or never pay taxes at all, ever. And even when you die, your children can get 10 years of tax-free distributions. None of that was available to me. And I'm mad as hell. But the mutual fund, it gives you everything that's in your best interest because diversification is in your best interest. Buying and selling and trading and trying to beat the market is not necessarily in your best interest inside of that mutual fund. That's something else. We'll come to that in a second. But almost everything that happens in every mutual fund is in your best interest, except some funds are built not for investors, but for speculators. You can buy a mutual fund that you put your $1,000 in, and it actually controls $2,000 worth of stock in that mutual fund. You got leverage, you got margin, basically. I don't think you want margin. I don't believe that you should have margin. Now, having said that, you could have a little tiny bit of margin if you wanted, but to have 100% on the money you put in, that's really being aggressive, because now if your market that you hold goes down 50%, you've lost everything. So having, and the stock market does go down 50%. As a matter of fact, the best market of the late 90s, in fact, 99, 98 and 99, the index that represents technology, the NASDAQ 100, was up 100% 2 years in a row. And people were attacking me. They never attacked me physically. They only attacked me with emails and with conversations that told me I was stupid and what part did I not understand about the real world. That they were printing money and all you had to do was bend over and pick it up off the road. And then that market went down 80% in the next couple of years. So if you do the wrong thing, I know somebody here might be interested in cryptocurrency, and I will just tell you that there is not one person that I know that in the industry, not one, that believes it's an investment. Not one. Because every way you try to define an investment, that's not what cryptocurrency is. It's a bet. The last day that I was in school at the New York Institute of Finance when I was 1966, I went back there to go to school to become a stockbroker. And on the last day before they let us go back to our respective offices, the teacher that day said, now you're about to go back and go to work and you're going to recommend things for people to buy. And I just want to tell you right now that you will be a fool to recommend it and they will be a fool to buy it. Take your recommendation. He said, I promise. Now that was a time when the market was very frothy and things were very high priced. Sound familiar? And then he said that that's okay. It's okay if you do that. But you got to be sure you can find another fool who's willing to pay more. Because what you don't want your client to end up being is the biggest fool. Because when we look at that stock market investment in that mutual fund that compounded at 11.4% for 50 years, it's not that there weren't some big mistakes in their companies. Well, in fact, I'm sure that the Savings and Loan, Washington Mutual was, and Enron certainly was. Those things are in there. They're part of the process. But the portfolio marched on. We always want you in a portfolio that we believe will march on. And you have to look for the evidence. And when you are not diversified, the evidence is pretty glaring that you have not protected yourself against the risk of individual companies not making it. Whoops. I'm stuck here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? This is the S&P 500. I know you can't see it. Well, maybe you can see this. Here's NVIDIA, 7%. Here's Apple, 6.3%. Microsoft, 4.6%. Over here, here's ExxonMobil, 1.2%. Used to be a big hitter. Here's Chevron. Here's Lilly. Here's the drug companies. These are the major industry sectors. And the 500 companies you own are there. And if you went up here and you looked at all these companies, you would know most of them. Because they're established. And the reality is that if you were going to own something, actually own something, and be in business, how would you like to own Microsoft? I mean, wouldn't you feel, if you really owned it, that you had a pretty good company? It doesn't get any better than owning these 500 companies. Now, by the way, I didn't say you can't make more money, because you can make more money historically than on these 500 companies, because these companies are established and they're good companies, well-known companies, well-branded companies. The way you make more money is to invest in a way that you take more risk. Because when you take more risk, historically, you get a higher return. And you can say, well, isn't cryptocurrency a chance to take more risk? Of course, but it's not an investment. It's a speculation. I already talked about this, but it's your choice. You can own a mutual fund that has high expenses, low expenses, or believe it or not, no expenses. Fidelity has a handful of funds that are pretty good funds that don't have any expense to operate them. They use it as a come on to get people into their family in the hopes that people will come to their senses and buy a mutual fund that will make them money. But you can pick it from 0 to 2. And the fact that these are expenses that go on forever, not just for a year. This is not the fee to get in. This is the fee to stay in every year. And you will have this huge fork in the road. And I actually have a list of 30 reasons that I think an index fund is better than an actively managed fund. But I want you to understand why more people owned, well, certainly in the past owned actively managed funds, because the promise was, let me manage your money and I will beat the market. And when I was in the business for a couple of years back in the 60s, 1960s, when I was a broker, that's what everybody wanted to do. They wanted to beat the market because the industry had convinced people that the people who managed these funds are smart and they know how to look at these companies and find the ones that are going to be better than other ones. And so they own the 100 best companies through their eyes. And nobody was doing any study about how good they were. And when they did the study, they found out, wait a minute, these people are not even making as much money as just owning the companies in an index without a manager. Just own all the companies. And John Bogle actually put that to work in 1976 and started the first public index fund. There was an index fund. It was available, a couple of them, through banks for wealthy clients, but not for the public. Bogle brought them to the public. And on top of that, Bogle did something else that was nobody's ever done before or since. Created a mutual fund family that is basically owned by the people who have their money there. And the way he rewards them is the bigger they get, the lower the fees become. And when John Bogle died, the man who started the biggest fund family, or one of the biggest 2 or 3 fund families in the industry, he was only worth $90 million, which is a pittance compared to the Johnson family, who own the Fidelity funds that are worth billions and billions of dollars. Why? Because John Bogle set up a family of mutual funds to benefit the people who put their money there and charged very little. And guess whose funds ended up in the top 10%? The index funds with the low expenses and broad diversification and lower taxes, because it wasn't the buying and selling and trading of trying to chase the hot performers. People have confidence when they hear a sales pitch. I've been accused of being a salesperson. I'm offended by that, but the fact is, there are people who can convince other people to move to action. I believe that in order to motivate you, because I've only got a few minutes with you, then I go out of your life and then soon I die, okay? So I got to make the sale now. And I have to be 2 things. I have to be a teacher and I have to be a preacher. Because teachers in general are not going to motivate you to do the things Once you're out of the classroom, they're not hounding you for the rest of your life. Have you set up the IRA yet? If I had a way to hound you, I would hound you. But the bottom line is that you hope when you're talking to people about something you believe in, and by the way, those people who think they can beat the market, I believe they believe that. There just isn't any evidence that it's any more than a random event when they do come out in the top 10%. And that's what the academic studies actually say. So the index fund for you, low cost, more diversification, exposure to companies on the way up. Now, they also make those index funds for little tiny companies too, and for companies only in the UK, or only international, or it'd be all sorts of onlys, and they can be broadly diversified in these funds of onlys, so that you as an investor, you could buy mutual funds to invest in almost any industry. You could be only in the drug business if you wanted to be. That's called a sector fund. We don't want you to do that, because when you buy this big S&P 500, you get that sector as part of what you own. We've already talked about all the different kinds of taxes. When you just put your money in a taxable account, you don't protect it in any way, you got to pay tax in theory on the money you make every year. Now, that's in terms of dividends and in terms of capital gains from purchases and sales. If the value of the portfolio goes up without any distributions, just the market value goes up, you don't pay any taxes until you sell. But you can also be in an IRA or a 401k. I'm going to call it a traditional IRA, traditional 401k. No taxes until you start taking money out, and then they get you at your highest tax rate at that moment that you're taking those distributions. And you are forced to take those distributions later in your life in the traditional IRA. Your tax level, your marginal tax rate for most of you is very low, and it will be in the early years of your career. Not everybody comes out making $250,000. And because your tax rate is low, the fact that with a traditional IRA you would get a tax deduction and you'd get a little tiny refund maybe. If you go the route of the Roth IRA, you do not get the tax deduction. It compounds tax-free from the day that you put the money in until the day you die. Even when you take the money out, it's tax-free. So to the extent that we don't know what our future tax rates are going to be, I think when you're young, particularly in the first 10, maybe 15, maybe even 20 years, you're going to qualify for a Roth. I would choose the Roth, because the other thing it allows us to do is when we die, there's also a 10-year period that money can be distributed to the family tax-free. And as long as they take it out before the end of that 10 years, it's all tax-free. It's an estate planning home run. And also, again, as I said, when I came into this business, marginal tax rates were 90 and 70 and 60. They were expensive. And they could be again. And how are we ever going to pay back the debt if we don't at some point tax people? Here's the best that I know in terms of where you should be investing. Target date funds. I will even get up and treat them in the way that I should treat them, because they are so important to you. They are going to change your life. We must respect them and treat them with tender, loving care. They are a combination of the mutual funds, and you can get them in an index fund But the target date fund does what almost everybody in this room wants. It takes your money and it manages it based on how old you are or how many years you will go until to retirement. And it has you in the right amount of fixed income and bonds and the right amount of equities. It has you in the S&P 500. It has you in some internationals. It may even have you in a small amount of small cap. And it's being managed as professionally as any money I know in the industry. Because the only thing that would screw them up and destroy them would be to do something stupid that would not be seen as prudent. They must be prudent. Now, because of that, they don't take as much risk as I would like. I can fix that, but I'll show you how in a minute. You get the mutual funds. You get the index funds. And you get these portfolios that are made for those people retiring every 5 years. So you're going to have to choose a year that represents about the time you expect you're going to retire. The further out you go, the more risky the portfolio is going to be. And that's the way it should be. So if at 82, I decide to put all my money in a 2070 target date fund, they're going to be managing my money with 90 to 100% of the money in the stock market. That's too much risk for me. But it's perfect for you. And today, target date funds are the default. And about 70% in 401k plans when people are defaulted into something. And about 70% of the money going into retirement is going into target date funds, which it should be because it's like a pension. I mean, this is exactly what it should be. And that's what they look like on paper. The orange is the part that's in bonds. Here's the stocks, the blue. You start all in stocks. This is from one provider. And then the bonds start at about age 35 or 35 years from retirement. And then when you get up here we are the last part of their life. Here I would be around in here. They would have me 40% in fixed equity and 60% in fixed income. These people, the Vanguard people, would have me 70% in fixed income, 30% in equity. So not every target date fund is exactly the same. And I love this. Who knows what it would take to motivate you to do this? It may just sound so boring that you're looking for more action. You want to be part of the process, not let somebody else take care of you. Here's what a study from Wharton did on 1.2 million 401k plan accounts through Vanguard. They were able to track those that didn't have any target date funds who were doing their own thing. They were deciding what equities asset classes to be in. They were deciding when to be in and out of the market. They were deciding whether they wanted to take any risk at all. And they found that the people that were all target date funds versus those that had no target date funds had an expected rate of return, annual return difference of 2.3% a year. Well, gosh, if we're looking to find an extra 0.5% so you could make $1.5 million more, I'm thinking if we can get you into target date funds and you have a chance to do 2.3% better than the people around you that aren't using target date funds, that doesn't make it the greatest return that anybody will ever get, but a great return. Particularly if because you trust it. And at the end of the day, most of what we know about and we do about investing is because we trust what they're doing. And at some point, you're going to read enough about all this stuff that you're going to say, yes, I have decided I trust or don't trust target date funds. And they're not in the business of getting out of stocks when the market goes down. They're not market timers. They don't believe in market timing. They believe you should buy and hold and stay the course. And you probably can't see it very well, but Chris Pedersen, who is one of the three people, he's a retiree from NVIDIA. He's an electrical engineer. He developed a strategy called Two Funds for Life. But in that top yellow section, that shows you the first, up until the point that you're, I don't think I have it. Up until the point that you're 25 years away from retirement, the projected return of a target date fund at Vanguard is 10.1% based on the last 50 plus years. As you get to the 20 years and you start adding some fixed income, you'll notice the return goes down. And by the time you get to actual retirement where it says 0, it's now 8.6% because you've got more bonds in the portfolio. You're not making as much because you're not supposed to be, because you're getting to the point where you're not going to work anymore, and you got to make sure the money lasts. Now, what happens here in Investing 201, how many would mind if I went over extra 15 minutes today? Gee, I just want you to see that, Eric. Do you have a date, by the way? Okay, I would like to get through it all if I can. Oh, God, I'm guilty again. I want to talk about 4 different major asset classes. By the way, if somebody does have to get out of here at 6 o'clock, it will not insult me if you walk out. Just don't say something nasty on the way up. Large cap blend. That's like the S&P 500. That's what we were looking at. They call it large cap blend because it's made up of growth companies that we love, and then we have funds that aren't as well loved called value companies. They don't sell for as much as the growth companies, but they're all part of that big index fund. Now, there's also large cap value. Large cap value, that's companies that are out of favor. Those are the ones that are not selling for the high price. Then we have, and by the way, those companies are hundreds of billions of dollars value and 1 or 2 a trillion. So these are big, big companies. Then we have these little companies, small cap blend, some value, some growth. And then we have an index itself, just value, just the out of favor small companies. How small are they? $3 to $6 billion, as opposed to hundreds of billions of dollars. And then we have what I call the 4 fund combo. Invest in each of these 25% each. It's another form of diversification. It's one thing to have 500 different stocks. It's very different kind of diversification to have 4 different kinds of equity asset classes. And you're going to be amazed at how different these equity asset classes are. When you get a chance, you got the PDF, I want you to take a look at this. Daryl Balls, our director of analytics, I love it. I just love this quilt chart because he has every year since 1928 there showing the large cap blend, the large cap value, the small cap blend, the small cap value, and the return of all 4 of them, 25% each. Let me take you closer. Here is 1988 through 1997. Notice during that period of time, small cap S&P 500, big companies, less risky, should have a lower return. They don't always. Sometimes they're up at the top. Often they're up at the top. But the bottom line is they can be all over the place because here in 1988, small cap value made 34.3, S&P 500 made 16.8. The next year, the S&P 500 makes 31.5, small cap value 13.3. Next year, S&P 500 loses 3.1, small cap value loses 23.6. Thanks. You've seen this before. So does it feel like they're different markets? Does it feel like you're putting things together that don't go up and down together? Which is the whole idea of diversification. If everything goes up together and down together, that's not diversified. You want to have things that go at different times. So I can see this value out of favor. It's either number 2 or number 1 there. All of these, that was a great decade, 10 years for value compared to growth. Then the next 10 years, 98 to 2007, look at this. From 2000 through 2000, let's see here, well, all the way through this period, the S&P 500 either lost money or when it made money, it did not make as much as small cap. And in fact, from 2000 to 2004, or 2004, the difference each year is 25%. 25%. In the same year, in the same market, if you want to. But there are reasons people like small cap sometimes, and sometimes they like large cap. But during this period of time, it was really out of favor. And people start thinking, well, this is meaningful. It is not meaningful. It is not at least statistically meaningful. It is meaningful if you have all your money in the S&P 500. And then here's another 10-year period. Notice the S&P is kind of up at the top or down at the bottom, a little bit of both. Small cap value up at the top, down at the bottom. Doesn't look like the previous 10 years, does it? And this is one of the problems we have as investors. Some people say, well, let them invest. They'll learn, they'll get experience, and they'll learn the right thing to do. How can you learn the right thing to do if nothing ever looks alike? There's no pattern here. You can say, well, I know exactly what to do because, no, it's random. And here is the last period from 2018 through last year. Now, I want you to notice something as I go back. Look at the 4 fund. Look at the volatility of returns compared to everything else, low or high volatility. I say that the 4 fund strategy is much less volatile. It's never number 1, it's never number 5. I mean, it's never the last, it's never the best, because it's a combination of all 4. It can't be. And as a matter of fact, what we do know, when we go here, look at this. Over that whole period of time, the small cap value index compounded at 13.1. Do I think it would be nice to have some of that in your portfolio? Of course I do. Do I think it should be a small amount? It depends on you. Unfortunately, I can't give personal advice, but if you had 10 or 20%, I know that I think over the long run it would be worthwhile. But I do know that in 36 years up there, where it says 1, that's the top quintile. Here's the bottom quintile, 26 years. It was at the bottom. Down here, the S&P 500, 10.2% compound rate of return over that period of time. And 29 years it was in the top, and 39 years it was in the bottom. Well, it was supposed to be in the bottom because it was less risky. But markets aren't that perfect. They're all over the place. And as I think I started to say and probably didn't finish it, humans want to make stories up about everything and explain everything. It's our nature. Chris Pedersen, anybody here watched our videos that we've done? Anybody? Okay. We do videos at paulmerriman.com. I hope that you will watch boot camp number 9, recently up, all about target date funds by Chris Pedersen. He developed the 2-fund strategy, a combination of small cap value and a target date fund. It's a great combination. He is one of the best teachers I've ever worked with. What he suggests, when you look at the numbers, if you just put 10% into small cap value and the other 90% in the target date fund, you go from 10.1 to 10.5. Way out here, you go from 8.6 to 9.2. We're looking for an extra 0.5%. There it is. Just a little bit of small cap value in your portfolio. You could also have half of your money in small cap value and half of your money in a target date fund. Certainly as a young person, you could have that exposure, and that takes you up to about a 12% compound rate of return. We're really talking now about the possibilities based on your saving that you could have the $10 million plus portfolio over time. This is the boot camp that if you have time this summer, I really hope you'll take the time to do this. We have 9 topics. About stocks versus bonds, I touched on that today. The stocks versus bonds has 3 ways you can participate. You can watch a video, you can read an article, you can listen to a podcast. Or you could do all 3. But by the end of that, we hope you're committed to equities. That's our hope. And then we have portfolios that a lot of people follow our work. We have a number of portfolios that are not target date funds, but are other ways that if you want to create the portfolio yourself, manage the portfolio yourself, they've been well tested back to 1970. And I love the fixed contributions. This is where you start with $83.33 a month and increase it by 3% a year. You can look at the table with all the different portfolios we have. You can see how you would have done looking backwards. We cannot buy the past, but at least you can see what the history would have been. The magic of AI. How many people are fans of AI? I'm curious. Whoa. Whoa. I do have to sit down. That's amazing. You don't trust it? Huh. Is it the illusions and the... environmental impact. Okay. Got it. Well, maybe this won't help. There are people that I trust, that I know personally, that have made a big commitment to education. And these people, I can go to AI and I can say, my question is, I can put money into an HSA, health savings account. I can put money into an IRA. I can put money into a 401k. I can pay off my debt, my student debt. How should I do that? What would I do first? Well, you can ask AI that question and you say, and I want my answer to be based on the work of Christine Benz, Rob Berger, Bill Bernstein, John Bogle, Ben Carlson. Now, you could stop right there if you wanted to. You could take any 3 of those people. And there are so many questions you're going to have about what's the next thing to do. And I will just tell you, I've tested it. I don't know if you would call it thoroughly, but I've asked a lot of questions and I've come to the conclusion that yes, it does go to Bill Bernstein. It does go to John Bogle. It does go to their work on the internet and then make it easy to compare how they feel about it. Because there's so much bad information out there. This is our best effort of helping you use it. On the other hand, it sounds like that may not be a comfortable thing to do. What you can do then is you can read the 4 pillars of investing. Oh, Bill Bernstein has a free book. If you go online and put in quotes, if you can, and ask for the PDF, free PDF for the book, if you can. It's a 16-page book, and it's terrific. It's terrific. Mike Piper has a whole bunch of really easy books on major subjects. He's a CPA and one of the straightest shooters and smartest kids that I know in the industry. Ben Carlson, I read every morning at about 3 o'clock in the morning, A Wealth of Common Sense. His articles are some of the most interesting articles on the investing process to give you perspective about what's the ride going to be like. I think the fact that we can go to a I have these blanks. I'm blanking. A roller coaster. You go to the car, you go to a big roller coaster ride, and we see that everybody comes back and gets off the roller coaster. But if I couldn't see that, I can tell you, I wouldn't want to go on it because it's really scary in the beginning. And Santa Cruz, there was a roller coaster, the first thing, and you don't even know if it's still there. You go down under the earth, I think I was 12 or 13. But you come out the other end and you have that experience, and now you trust theoretically. Somehow you've got to come to the level of having trust in something, because what we all want you to have is a discipline. I know how to lose weight. I got to show you, I'm not taking my pants off. This is a belt I used to wear. And that's when I was 250 pounds. I know how to lose weight. I have lost over 4,000 pounds in my lifetime, up and down. I've never had the discipline to keep it down. It's always up and down. And yet, don't you, anybody here, you got to know how to stay thin. Have you ever been fat? Never have. Have you ever wanted to be fat? Don't ever want to. Don't ever want to. No, but the reality is almost everything that there is to conquer, there's a disciplined way to go around about conquering it. you have decided to do, and I'll tell you what I think. But anyway, I don't. Then goes the 3.5 million, then it's where you add 3%, then it's where you start early. All of those things are really important steps. And I hope you don't, I hope that even if you just start with 1%, 1% is legitimate. 1% is enough to open up the target date fund if you want, at Fidelity. If you do use their index fund, that's because they have one that's not an index based target date fund. And I'm more than happy to help answer questions, Paul at paulmerriman.com. But I need for you to leave the phone number, because sometimes I need to ask a question before another question about your question for me, because I don't want to sit there and write a long answer. And I'd rather, it's so much easier for me just to tell you. And I hope literally this summer, you will find the hour, find 50 hours over the whole summer to put into these websites, to put in to the boot camp, and see if you get it. It is not complex. I teach high school classes and they get it. It is not complex. The fact that the industry makes you believe that you need them in order to get what you need for yourself. In fact, if you do need them because you haven't learned the basics, then you're just costing yourself a bloody fortune over a lifetime. So the sooner you get to it, the better off I think you'll be. I'm only about 7 minutes over. Thank you all very much. Oh, am I supposed to answer some questions?
Yeah, we do have one question that came in online, Paul. So this is from a new quote asked, they said, I'm new on Fidelity. Do you know if they offer support on how to invest the money you deposit in the account?
Do they have the support? Absolutely. Fidelity, well, that's still working and
If you want to stand close to the.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, we had to switch
Okay.
the language, yeah.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah, you just stand close to this thing.
Okay. Fidelity, regardless of the size of account, will help you get over the whatever hurdle that you have. They want you for a lifetime. Even if all you do is have your money in a target date fund. In fact, Fidelity has this amazing product for people who want to build their own portfolio, but they don't want to have to really rebalance it and do the things that you might have to do. They have what they call basket portfolios, $5 a month, and they do everything. I mean, you have to push a button and then it automatically does everything. They are making it more and more efficient and user-friendly. So yes, and in fact, because Fidelity in many cases charges higher prices than Vanguard, they have more money to have people on the phone to help people. So they just want to get you into their higher, more profitable products. That's what they want. You want to stay with the low profit margin portfolios at Fidelity. The no expense mutual funds, for example, the target date fund that's indexes, which has to compete with Vanguard. And so they have to keep the costs low. In fact, sometimes they even go below Vanguard in order to not be losing business to Vanguard.
So to a graduating senior, which some are,
Yeah.
what would be like the first step? What would you say would be a critical first step for them as they think about these 3 steps towards millions?
Well, first of all, I would really like you to have a plan. And that plan means that you have some vision of the future and what you want to accomplish. The fact is, many of you have debt. And you have to have a plan on what you're gonna do about your debt anyway. You may not know how you wanna pay that debt off. I'm going to recommend that you try the AI, if you don't mind spending whatever cost there is to society to do that. But because there are a handful of things that you might want to consider. See, if the cost of the debt is not too high, and that's discussed in the answers, but if the cost of the debt is not too high, I would like to see it be a compromise. I want you to get started with the saving discipline now, particularly if you're with a company that's got a 401k plan that has a match. Think of this. You're going to put money in there and they're going to match it up to some amount. Sometimes it's 3% of what you of your income. Sometimes it's 5%. Some cases, some companies, it's 100%. So whatever you put in immediately, remember I said earlier, you have to expect that you're not going to get the market to make you a lot of money. A match is the greatest, easiest money you'll ever make in your life because it's guaranteed. But you have to come up with the money. And I'm telling you, even if it means you have to take a second job. And I've kidded about this, but I see what young people oftentimes spend. Gosh, I was talking to her. We have a 30-year-old daughter, and talking about how much people are paying for Botox payments at her age. And what the heck is going on? A Botox? What is doing need Botox for? Compared to that money being used for something that is that it may not, I don't know, fill in the lines or whatever it is a 30-year-old has to worry about. But there is money to be found. Go to Choose FI and read what people are doing. And I also think that people, if they can't save money, maybe they're eating out too much and they need to learn how to cook. And that's the second job. You learn how to cook. You have to be motivated. And the thing is, this is what just all the work I do to try to help people. The place that it's so easy for me to find followers, engineers. Engineers. They all seem to get it. They understand the idea of having evidence to make a decision rather than feelings. They understand the impact of being frugal and saving. Nobody seems to get it any better than engineers. But we all should be able to get it. But if I want to go talk someplace, I got to speak to 154 engineering honor students at Rutgers. Every one of them. Excellent. They thought it was a great presentation because it was all stuff they wanted to hear. Because they're looking for the evidence. And I hope that you will look for the evidence and make a commitment to frugality to the extent that you save to take care of yourself. It's not for anybody else, it's for yourself. And by the way, I had a comment at the break. There are some people like myself that a major part of what we're about is trying to help others, leave money for others, however we can help others. Other people just want to get through their life. You don't have to be left with anything if you know how to spend the last money when you die. I mean, it's a trick. I don't know how to do it. But some people actually, there's a book called Die Broke. And the whole idea is your last check bounces. That's okay. And I just don't know how to do that, and I don't want to do that. And I want my work, my saving, my discipline to be a reward for other people. Not everybody has to do that. But if you can just take care of yourself, that I guess is the prime, most important project for us.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming to this, and thanks especially to Paul for sharing his expertise.
Good luck. Good luck.